It started with a spill. A tray hit the ground, a customer gasped, and the sound of breaking porcelain sliced through the cafe's morning rush like thunder. Heads turned. The supervisor snapped. And there, standing in the middle of it all, was a young black waitress named Amara, her trembling hands reaching to pick up the shards before anyone else could. The air was thick with judgment. The kind of silence that bruises pride. Then, from the back of the line, a voice spoke, calm, patient, disguised. "Take your time," said a man in a worn hoodie and faded jeans. No one knew him. Not the customers, not the staff, not even the supervisor barking orders. But that man was Ethan Cole, the billionaire founder and CEO of Heart and Hearth, one of the largest coffee chains in the country. And that day, he wasn't there to be seen. He was there to see. Steam hissed from the espresso machine. The smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. Amara forced a smile as she wiped the counter, pretending not to hear the supervisor mutter, "Maybe if you moved faster, this wouldn't happen." Her eyes glistened for a second, but she blinked it away. Ethan watched from his corner, every detail burning into his memory. The worn tiles beneath her shoes. The faded name tag she'd taped back together with clear tape. The way she apologized to every customer like she was afraid of existing. When it was finally his turn in line, she approached him, still shaken but polite. "Good morning, sir. What can I get you?" Her voice carried a softness he hadn't heard in years, a melody laced with exhaustion. Ethan smiled faintly. "Just a black coffee, please." She nodded, turned to pour, and as she did, she whispered under her breath, words she didn't mean for anyone to hear. 3 small words that would stop him cold. "People deserve better." He froze. The world around him blurred, the laughter, the chatter, the noise of spoons against mugs. Those words sliced through everything. They were said so simply, so gently, yet carried the weight of every injustice she'd endured. It wasn't anger in her voice. It was resignation, the kind of truth that only comes from someone who's given too much for too long. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest. He'd heard those words before, in company slogans, advertisements, and PR campaigns, but never like this. Never raw. Never real. She turned and handed him his cup with a tired smile, not realizing the man she was serving was the same one who owned the entire company. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome," she replied, already moving to the next customer. But he didn't move. He just stood there, coffee in hand, staring at the slogan printed on the cup, "Serving humanity with heart." And suddenly, the words felt like a lie. He found a seat near the window, pretending to sip his drink while his eyes followed Amara's every movement. He watched as the supervisor scolded her for taking too long with an order, then watched her still smile and say, "I understand." He saw customers talk over her like she was invisible. He saw the exhaustion in her shoulders, the quiet grace in her endurance. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt something powerful: shame. He had built this company from scratch. From a single store to a nationwide empire. The brand was his pride, his identity, his legacy. But sitting there, hidden in plain sight, he saw the truth. Somewhere along the way, the warmth had turned cold. What was once about people had become about profit. And the ones holding it all together, the Amaras of the world, were breaking quietly behind counters. At one point, Amara leaned against the register, rubbing her wrist where the tray had hit her earlier. The supervisor walked by and muttered, "Don't let me see you resting again." Ethan clenched his jaw. He wanted to say something, but he stayed silent. This wasn't the time. He needed to see how deep the rot went. Minutes passed. Hours, maybe. The cafe buzzed with life, yet felt lifeless to him. Every fake smile, every rushed, "Have a nice day," echoed hollow. And yet, Amara's quiet resilience stood out like light in a dim room. She never complained. Never fought back. She carried herself with dignity, even when no one treated her with it. Ethan finally stood up, walked to the counter, and placed a small tip in the jar, more than anyone had all morning. Amara smiled, surprised. "Thank you, sir. That's very kind." Ethan looked into her eyes, and for a moment, he saw something he'd lost: humanity. "You deserve it," he said softly. She tilted her head, puzzled, but before she could respond, he turned and left. Outside, the city roared. Cars, chatter, life. But inside him, there was silence. A kind of silence that only comes when truth sinks deep. He walked down the street, coffee still warm in his hands, but it tasted bitter. Not because of the beans, but because of what it represented. A company that claimed to serve love but forgot the people who poured it every day. He found himself staring at a billboard with his own face on it. The tagline beneath read, "Heart and Hearth, where every cup warms the soul." He laughed bitterly. Whose soul? He thought. The investors? The executives? Because the workers certainly didn't look warmed by anything but exhaustion. That night, Ethan sat in his penthouse, the city skyline glimmering beyond the glass. His coffee mug rested untouched beside a stack of reports and profit sheets. None of it mattered. He couldn't stop hearing her voice. People deserve better. 3 words. Just 3. But they carried more truth than all his annual speeches combined. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long he'd been blind. He thought about his mother, how she used to work long shifts as a waitress when he was a boy. How she'd come home tired but proud. How she'd taught him that kindness wasn't a weakness. Somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten that. He'd traded empathy for expansion, compassion for competition. As the night deepened, Ethan made a silent promise. Tomorrow, he'd go back. Not as a CEO. Not as a billionaire trying to fix things with money. But as a man trying to understand what broke. Because sometimes, it doesn't take a protest or a scandal to start a revolution. Sometimes, all it takes are 3 simple words whispered by someone unseen, someone unheard, words that remind the powerful that every empire begins and ends with the people who serve it. And for Ethan Cole, those 3 words had just cracked the walls of his empire wide open. The next morning, Ethan Cole returned to the cafe. No suit, no chauffeur, no cameras. Just the same worn hoodie and jeans. The same disguise that made him invisible. The same disguise that gave him eyes. He slipped inside quietly, his hands tucked into his pockets, watching the heartbeat of his own empire unfold in real time. The smell of fresh coffee and baked muffins filled the air, but beneath it, something sour lingered, tension. The manager, a tall man with a red tie too tight for his neck, barked orders like a drill sergeant. "Move faster, Amara. We've got a line out the door," he shouted. His voice cut through the cafe like glass. Amara nodded without protest, her hands moving in perfect rhythm, pouring, serving, cleaning, repeating. The quiet dignity in her face didn't belong to this place. She didn't serve like an employee. She served like someone protecting something sacred. Ethan took a seat in the corner booth again. He didn't pull out a phone, didn't pretend to read. He just watched. The supervisor berated a younger barista for forgetting whipped cream on a latte. Another worker asked for a break and got a glare instead. The energy was mechanical, drained. Every smile felt rehearsed, like a mask worn too long. Then Ethan's gaze returned to Amara. She was juggling 3 orders at once, dodging rude comments from customers and insults from her boss. But when a young trainee dropped a tray, Amara was the first to kneel down and help, whispering softly, "It's okay, we all mess up." The trainee nodded, her eyes glossy with relief. The manager saw it and scoffed. "Quit babying her, Amara. We don't have time for therapy." Ethan clenched his fists under the table. That same line, that same arrogance, was the kind that killed morale in every branch he'd built. He used to believe his company culture was different. That heart and hearth really did stand for warmth. But sitting there now, watching this play out, he saw nothing but cold efficiency, a system that had forgotten its heart. Minutes turned into hours. Ethan noticed small cruelties stacking up like dust, invisible but heavy. A customer snapped fingers to get Amara's attention. Another complained about the tone of her voice. The manager laughed it off, saying, "She's still learning customer service." And through it all, Amara smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes from happiness, but the kind that hides pain. The kind that says, "I need this job." When she finally got a 5-minute break, Amara retreated to the back room. Ethan, pretending to check his phone, drifted closer, not to spy, but to listen. Her voice was low but full of warmth as she comforted the trainee again. "Don't let them make you small," she said. "One day, Kindness will pay more than cruelty. Ethan's heart twisted. Kindness will pay more than cruelty. Those words echoed through his mind like a sermon. He had built his billion-dollar success by selling warmth, but these workers, these faces, were the ones truly paying the price. The manager's voice suddenly boomed again. "You, hoodie guy. You buying something or just hanging around?" Ethan looked up slowly, meeting his stare. "Just watching how business runs here," he said calmly. The man smirked. "Well, this isn't a charity. You either order or move along." His tone dripped with disdain. Ethan didn't react. Not yet. He stood, placed a dollar bill on the counter, and said, "Another black coffee." Amara stepped forward, quietly diffusing the tension. "It's okay, Mr. Harris," she said softly to the manager. "I'll take care of it." The man rolled his eyes and walked off. Ethan met her gaze for a brief moment. There was something about her eyes. Tired, yes, but unbroken. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She smiled faintly. "They're all rough, sir. But the coffee still needs to be poured." He wanted to tell her everything right then, who he was, what he planned to do, how much her words had shaken him, but he didn't. Not yet. He needed to see more, to understand how deep this poison ran before trying to heal it. So, he took his cup, thanked her, and sat back down. Hours later, when the cafe finally quieted down, Ethan slipped out and walked the long way home. The city buzzed with life around him, office lights flickering, laughter spilling from nearby bars, but he barely noticed. His mind was somewhere else. He replayed every cruel word, every forced smile, every injustice he'd witnessed. It wasn't just one bad manager. It was a reflection of what he had built. The rot had roots that traced back to his own decisions. Back at his penthouse, he dropped his keys on the marble counter and stared at the wall where a sleek plaque hung, "Heart and Hearth, serving humanity with heart." He'd looked at it thousands of times before, but tonight it mocked him. He saw now that it wasn't just a slogan. It was a lie. The kind of lie you repeat so often, you start believing it. He sat down, running a hand through his hair, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt ashamed. He thought about his board meetings, how they obsessed over margins, profits, and quarterly goals. He thought about the executives who bragged about cutting costs by optimizing labor. Optimizing. That word echoed like a curse, because what they really meant was exploiting. And then he thought of Amara, her hands, her grace, her quiet strength in the face of humiliation. Her words replayed in his mind like a melody that wouldn't fade. People deserve better. Kindness will pay more than cruelty. He walked over to the window, looking down at the city lights. Every cafe, every glowing logo that bore his company's name, suddenly looked different. They weren't signs of success anymore. They were reminders of every worker forced to smile through pain. By day 3, Ethan knew he couldn't just keep watching. Something inside him had changed, a restlessness, a conviction. But he also knew rushing in as the CEO would only make people perform, not reveal. He needed to expose the truth, not stage it. So, he decided to stay silent a little longer, to see how far the infection went. That night, as he turned off the lights and the penthouse fell silent, he whispered the company's motto to himself one last time, "Serving humanity with heart." Then, under his breath, he added, "Maybe it's time to start meaning it." But deep down, Ethan already knew, what he had seen couldn't be unseen. What he had heard couldn't be unheard. The empire he built was cracking. And the fault line had a name. Amara. The storm came quietly. No thunder. No warning. Just a morning like any other, or so they thought. The cafe opened at 7 sharp, as always. The manager strutted in, barking orders before the lights were even on. "We've got a corporate visit today," he announced, puffing out his chest. "The CEO's team is coming by to inspect. Everyone better smile like your rent depends on it." Everyone froze. Amara glanced up from the counter, her face calm but curious. She'd seen these visits before. The suits would walk in, take pictures, nod politely, and leave, never really seeing the people who kept the place alive. "Amara," the manager said sharply, snapping his fingers. "Stay in the back. We need the front to look professional." His voice dragged on the last word, dripping with arrogance. She paused, swallowing the hurt quietly. "Yes, sir." He didn't even look at her as he added, "And wear the gray apron today. The red one doesn't photograph well." Ethan arrived last. This time, no hoodie, no disguise. A black suit, tailored perfectly. The air seemed to shift as he stepped through the door. Cameras clicked. Assistants followed. Every worker stood straighter. The manager rushed forward with a fake smile so wide it almost cracked his face. "Mr. Cole, what an honor. We weren't expecting you personally, sir." Ethan's eyes moved slowly around the room, scanning every face, every corner. He could see Amara's reflection faintly in the glass of the office window, tucked away, polishing mugs she'd already cleaned. That sight alone made his chest tighten. He looked at the manager. "Why is she in the back?" The man blinked. "Oh, her. She's new. Still learning the ropes. I just didn't want her to get nervous in front of you, sir." Ethan said nothing at first. Just stared. The silence grew heavy. Every second dragged. The employees shifted uneasily. Then he spoke, calm, quiet, but with a weight that filled the room. "You told her to hide." The manager chuckled nervously. "Well, I just wanted the best presentation." Ethan cut him off. "You told her she didn't fit the image." His tone sharpened. "But she's the only person here who actually fits the purpose." The cafe went dead silent. Even the coffee machines seemed to stop hissing. Ethan turned to the staff, his voice steady but full of something raw, disappointment. "I built Heart and Hearth to serve people, not profit off their pain. But today, I've seen what we've become." The cameras captured every word, every glance. One of his assistants stepped forward, unsure whether to stop recording, but Ethan waved them off. "No. Let it roll." He wanted this truth to live. To breathe. He gestured toward the team. "You smile for customers, but not for each other. You wear kindness like a costume. You talk about service, but you forget humanity. Somewhere along the way, we started serving numbers, not names." The manager shifted, his smile now gone. "Mr. Cole, if there's been a misunderstanding." Ethan's eyes snapped to him. "The misunderstanding," he said, "is that you ever thought this company was yours to twist." He pointed toward the back room. "Bring Amara out here." No one moved at first. Then, slowly, Amara stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked at Ethan, not as a billionaire, but as the quiet man in the hoodie from a few days ago. Recognition flickered in her face. "You," she whispered softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "It's good to see you again, Amara." The manager looked between them, confused. "Wait, you know her?" Ethan's voice hardened. "She's the reason I'm here." Every head turned. The manager's face paled. I don't understand." Ethan took a slow step forward, his tone dropping lower, more deliberate. 3 days ago, I came here in disguise. I saw how my employees were treated. I saw you berate them like they were beneath you. I saw you talk down to her." His hand gestured toward Amara. "And I heard her say 3 words that reminded me what this company was supposed to stand for." Amara's lips parted, barely audible. "People deserve better." Ethan nodded. "Yes. People deserve better." Those words hit me harder than any board meeting ever has. The cameras zoomed in as Ethan's voice carried across the cafe. "You want to know what real professionalism looks like? It's her, staying kind when the world gives her every reason not to be. Showing grace when she's met with cruelty. That's what Heart and Hearth was built on. And that's what you've forgotten." The manager stuttered, trying to defend himself. "Sir, she's just a waitress." Ethan's tone thundered. "No. She's the reason this company still has a heart." Gasps rippled through the staff. The cameras caught every stunned expression. For a long moment, Ethan just stood there, breathing deeply, letting the silence sink in. Then he turned to the manager and said, "You're dismissed. Effective immediately." The man's jaw dropped. "You can't." Ethan stepped closer. "I just did." The manager stormed out, red-faced, muttering curses under his breath, but no one dared to look away from Ethan. He turned back to the staff. "I want you all to know something. This company will change. Starting today. No more intimidation. No more silence. No more pretending to care. We will care." He turned to Amara again, his voice softer now. "You reminded me who I was before the money, before the titles. You said people deserve better. You were right. And from this moment on, that will be our mission, not as a slogan, but as a promise." Amara's eyes glistened, her voice trembling as she said, "I was just saying what I felt." "And that," Ethan said, smiling gently, "is exactly what changed everything." The cameras stopped rolling, but no one moved. The cafe was still, the kind of stillness that follows a storm. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting light through the glass. It touched Amara's face first. Then Ethan's. Then the golden letters of the company's old motto on the wall, "Serving humanity with heart." For the first time, those words meant something again. But even as peace settled in the room, Ethan's mind was already racing. The cameras had captured the truth, yes, but would the world believe it? Would the other stores change, or would this be dismissed as a PR stunt? He didn't know. Not yet. All he knew was this: the company had been reborn in the most unexpected place, not in a boardroom, not in a headline, but in the quiet courage of one overworked waitress who dared to whisper the truth when no one else would. And though Ethan had reclaimed his heart that day, he also knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the cafe doors opened to a silence that feels heavy with truth. The chatter is gone. The smell of coffee lingers, but something has changed, something deep, almost sacred. The waitress, Amara, walks in like every other day. Her hair tied back, her apron folded neatly. But she doesn't know that today, nothing will be ordinary. A black car pulls up outside. Everyone stares. The door opens, and the customer from yesterday steps out, but this time, he's not dressed in jeans and a hoodie. He's in a charcoal suit. Elegant. Calm. The kind of presence that bends the air. The whispers begin. "That's him. That's Mr. Ellis." The staff freeze. The manager, the same man who mocked Amara, stumbles forward, his voice trembling. "Yes, sir, we didn't expect." Ellis lifts a hand. Silence. His eyes move past everyone and land on Amara. She's still holding a tray, her face pale. He walks toward her, slow, steady, until the entire cafe feels like it's holding its breath. Then he says softly, "You told me 3 words yesterday. People have hearts. Do you know what those words did?" Amara blinks, confused. I didn't mean." He smiles, faintly. "You reminded me what I built this place for." He turns to the room. "I started this cafe chain to bring warmth, not arrogance. To serve people, not humiliate them. Yesterday, I saw everything I'd forgotten." His gaze lands on the manager. "You taught me how far we've fallen. And you're fired." Gasps. Silence. Then he looks back at Amara. "And you, if you'll accept it, I'd like you to be the new general manager. Someone who remembers that hearts come before money." Her hands shake. She doesn't know what to say. Tears rise in her eyes, but she manages to whisper, "Sir, thank you." Ellis nods, eyes soft. "No, Amara. Thank you for being the only one truly awake in a room full of people asleep." As the others watch, stunned, humbled, silent, Ellis turns to leave. But before stepping out, he glances back once more. "You can lose money," he says quietly, "and make it again. But when you lose kindness, you've lost everything." The camera lingers on Amara, her face wet with quiet tears, as the cafe fills with sunlight and a new kind of silence. Not shame, but peace. Power doesn't reveal who we are, it exposes it. The smallest act of dignity can remind even the richest man what it means to be human.